The church in the province of Corrientes, Argentina was turned upside down in search of a missing nun. However, it wasn't long before they found her on the stairs of the building, her face bruised so badly that it had turned blue, and she was hanging by her neck from one of the beams. She had been brutally raped before being killed by a merciless monster. Outraged voices rose, questioning the identity of the criminal, while whispers circulated at the same time that they already knew him. His indifference and constant wandering pointed unmistakably to that young man. Francisco Antonio Loriana was born in 1952 and studied at a school in Corrientes, to a family barely able to support itself. When he turned 22, he fled the town after a heated chase with the police following his accusation of raping and hanging a nun inside the church premises. He then escaped and hid in the city of San Isidro with his mother and sister. In the meantime, he began to utilize the skill he had learned from his brother, wood carving and ornamentation. He was highly skilled in his craft, going around exhibitions and stalls to sell his carvings. In addition to that, he made custom furniture. He didn't stop at showcasing wooden sculptures, but also started offering beautiful accessories. Over time, he gained the trust of his customers, the love of his neighbors, and their respect as well. He then decided to crown his new life with stability in marriage. He chose Maria Romero, the girl he loved, to be his partner in building a small family. They were blessed with 3 children, turning his dark past into a distant story that no longer seemed connected to him, as he became the fortunate family man enjoying a quiet, peaceful life. However, one day he decided to lead a life completely different from the one that appeared to the world. The protagonist of this new life was a violent and ruthless criminal, devoid of mercy for anyone. He bore no resemblance to the hardworking, loving father and husband he seemed to be. In 1974, despite never neglecting his family or work duties, his wife and neighbors were often puzzled to find Francisco every other Wednesday and Thursday, wearing sports shoes and driving off in his car, only to reappear 2 days later. He often satisfied their curiosity with excuses, claiming he was buying supplies or showcasing his wooden sculptures. But in truth, those short trips were far from being business-related. He was actually spending his time away from home, wandering the streets of Boulogne, Martinez, and Lomas de San Isidro in the northern area, searching for human prey at bus stations. At other times, he would set his sights on luxurious mansions, with their vast gardens and sparkling swimming pools. He would attack women sunbathing or break into chalets and houses where he sensed there were few people or a woman alone. He would sexually assault her and then brutally kill her, either by strangulation, stabbing, or sometimes shooting her with his .32 caliber pistol. The same fate awaited his victims if he encountered them in the street. He possessed the boldness of a devil to the extent that he would sometimes return to the crime scene to relive the moment once again. Of course, his crimes of killing and raping women and girls quickly caused panic among the citizens. But this criminal happened to emerge during the era of President Juan Domingo Perón, who was known as a reformer of the state. But at the same time, there was a blackout in the press on news of criminals, as he wanted to show Argentina under his rule as a country busy with modernization, progress, and caring for citizens, regardless of any other circumstances. But this man's crimes were worse than to be ignored, because his harm and violence even affected young children. In one of these crimes, a woman went to buy some necessities and Francisco broke into the house while she was away, where her 2 young daughters, Noemi and Nora, aged 5 and 7 years, were staying. He raped the eldest child first, then took her to another room and started strangling her with a pillow. When she resisted death, he pulled out his gun and treated her with a bullet. Then he went back to strangle the other child after assaulting her as well, then ran away. When the mother returned from her shopping trip, she found her 2 innocent children lying on the ground, as if they were dolls that one of the naughty boys had played with, and then, destroyed with hatred when he was overcome by boredom, she ran towards the street, screaming hysterically and crying bitterly, until the neighbors and passersby gathered around her and called the police. At this point, people were fed up with the lazy and talkative police who refused to warn people despite knowing about the random killings that were taking place. People in the northern region began to warn each other about the presence of a serial killer outside, lurking for evil for everyone. As for the police, they were certain that these crimes and their method were often committed by those who fall under the category of serial seal. There is always only one item stolen from the victim, and sometimes this item is of no value. And when it happens to be a valuable item, it never appears in pawn shops or secondhand stores, which supports the hypothesis that the killer obtains souvenirs from his victims. That is, he is driven to kill purely psychologically. His crimes are often characterized by sexual assault and are committed on Wednesdays or Thursdays after 6 p.m. About every other week, even the gun is a .32 caliber in case the killer shoots. But other than that, nothing leads them to his identity, until that day after Francisco Antonio committed one of his usual murders in a house and was about to flee the place. He was surprised by a man staring at him. Here he pulled out his .32 caliber pistol and shot him, but he did not hurt him. It did not stop there, but the man went to the police and gave his specifications, and they told him that they had a lead to follow. And soon his pictures began to spread on the walls everywhere, even in the neighborhoods adjacent to his house. The press called him the Wizard of San Isidro. Meanwhile, inside the courtyard of a property on Tompkinson Street, while Francisco was peeping through a row of trees at children playing in the swimming pool of one of the houses, the landlady saw him and alerted the gardener, who in turn approached to ask about the reason for his presence. He answered evasively by saying that he was looking for a construction worker and left in a hurry, so the gardener and the woman called the police. On February 27, 1975, Francisco took his favorite gun, along with another gun he had recently acquired, and put them inside his Fiat 600 and closed the door of his carpentry shop. Then he went home to say goodbye to his wife, Maria Romero, and his 3 children. Before closing the door behind him, he said one last word to his wife. "Don't let the children out because there are a lot of degenerates outside." Then he slammed the door, started the car engine in front of his house for the last time, and headed towards the city of San Isidro, driving recklessly, abandoning his calm and his keenness not to attract attention. While he was walking on foot, wandering around one of the neighborhoods looking for a house that would be easy to break into, his eyes fell on a woman who lived in one of the chalets on Tompkinson Street. He stood outside her house, waiting for the right moment to attack, but he forgot to make sure that no one was watching him while he was watching. He caught the attention of a little girl, no more than 8 years old, standing near the kitchen window when she saw him staring at the chalet, and immediately noticed his resemblance to the picture hanging on the refrigerator that was recently distributed to citizens in order to arrest him. The girl quickly told her mother what she saw, and the woman headed towards the phone, barely holding her composure and trying to overcome her, while pretending to call her husband while she was talking to the police. At a crucial moment, he saw her staring at him, holding the phone, and her daughter next to her, but unusually he smiled at her coldly while waving his hand to her in farewell, then walked away indifferently. And so a large campaign of police and police dogs spread out to search the yard, houses, and streets in search of the bloodthirsty killer. At that time, there was a building guard named Carlos Sandoval who said that his dog Rhino was moving nervously around one of the roofs in the back of the building, where the gardening supplies were kept. He opened the door and approached with the dog a bundle that looked like old blankets in the dark, but he felt afraid and did not go any closer. He quickly retreated to call the police to tell them that he felt someone was hiding in the shed. The police rushed to the address described by the dozens with cars and pistols, even machine guns. The place was very close to the same area where it was reported that he was seen when the citizens saw the large numbers of police and the firearms they were carrying. They were led to believe that there was an imminent political coup up in security chaos, especially since their current president had previously been overthrown in a previous military coup before returning to power again, as the political and social climate of Argentina at that time was full of unrest and violent fluctuations. Accordingly, a large number of the neighborhood residents took their weapons and went out into the streets and went to the police to inquire about what was happening. When they realized that they were chasing the notorious criminal, they joined them. Francisco Antonio felt that he had lost all chance of escaping because of the loud voices of the crowd outside demanding that he surrender and that they knew where he was hiding. He went out obediently, and the civilians and the police were about to breathe a sigh of relief, and they were filled with a sense of victory for a short moment, because all that remained for the criminal was to put his hand in his pocket and take out his identity card. But because Francisco is the type of killer whose next move is really hard to predict, he did not care about their numerical superiority and brandished a 7.65 caliber pistol in their faces. The result would have been a massacre in which at least a few people would have been killed, had it not been for the intervention of Carlos Sandoval's dog, who attacked him when she instinctively sensed that her owner would be hurt, which made him quickly flee. The police began chasing him, showering him with a hail of bullets, one of which lodged in his shoulder. Again, the police believed that he would have to stop when he was exhausted, but he passed 6 buildings, still running at a wild speed and jumping over fences with great skill, until he found a small chicken coop and hid inside it. But Carlos' dog was on the lookout for him again, acting like a dog trained to track criminals. No sooner had she been running than she suddenly stopped and began barking towards the barn, so they did not ask him to surrender and come out, but they took out their machine guns and showered the fragile walls with bullets, while he screamed and responded to them with his weak pistol to no avail against their heavy weapons, until the commotion inside the chicken coop subsided, and the police stormed the hideout where Francisco lay lifeless, blood flowing from all over his body and his pockets still full of ammunition. But they did not find anything that indicated his identity, not even an identity card. They resorted to identifying him through his fingerprints. And once they knew his hobbies, they raided 2 of his family's homes, the home of his wife and children, and the home of his sister and mother. Inside the house where he lives with his wife and children, they found rings, bracelets, and chains that he kept as mementos and belonged to the victims hidden inside shoes, along with many weapons. They began to interrogate his wife regarding the items that were found and whether she was aware of her husband's adventures, but she answered, denying her husband's involvement in any of those horrific acts unjustly attributed to him, and said, "There must be something wrong. My husband could not have done all of that. He was a good father, a good husband, and a craftsman who loved what he did." The police were able, through the items he kept, to determine his total of 13 crimes, while there were 2 rapes. The girls gave the same description that resembled the picture, so they were called again, but this time to the morgue, where they washed Francisco's body of blood and showed it to the girls, who confirmed that it was the same person who attacked them. Thus, the identity of the killer was officially announced with conclusive evidence, but his wife, sister, and mother continued to defend him to the fullest. As his sister stated to the press, Francisco was neither a magician nor a murderer. He was an excellent brother and a good father. He lived for his children. In addition, he was also a great artist, and with the creation of sculptures, he earned enough to own a house and a car. Some people began to suspect that the police had targeted the wrong person because of his family's statements, but the deputy commissioner said, "We can provide the names and events that Francisco was involved in, but it is difficult for us because these are sexual crimes. The victims do not want to be identified publicly." The police later expressed regret for having to kill him because they missed the opportunity to question him to find out what motivated the skilled craftsman and respected family man to become the most notorious serial killer in Argentine criminal history.